All right, welcome back, everybody. Episode number 12 of the Plumecast. Thank you guys all for stopping by once again. If you guys are new to the channel, new to the Plumecast, this is my weekly gaming news podcast where I focus mainly on Xbox news and some PlayStation news, and I do daily uploads of Xbox news throughout the week. So if you're interested in that, make sure to check out those videos and subscribe if you enjoy what you see. But we're going to jump into it this week. It has been a pretty dead week overall, I would say, when it comes to the news, and there's been some not much crazy stuff to talk about, but there's been some rumors, there's been some features that have come out on Xbox I wanted to go over, and maybe some more features coming out in the future, and just some very clickbaity articles that game journalists publish because there's not much news out there and they still need to get traffic to the website. So we'll get into all of that further on, but as I do every single podcast, I drink a beer and I ask you guys what you've been drinking, so let me know in the comments below. This week has been all about the Montreal Canadiens, if they have made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. If you guys watched last week's podcast all the way to the end, I said if you wanted to help me out at all, besides just watching my content, it was to cheer for the Habs to get to the Stanley Cup Finals, and they managed to do it. And this is the first time in my entire life that I've seen, or at least I've been old enough to see and understand what's going on and being able to see the Habs in the finals. And I'm a diehard fan. I don't, other than just recently, I don't really go crazy on social media about it, but I am a diehard. Like, I lose sleep over them. I watch pretty much every single game. So this means a ton to me, and I can't wait to get this series started on Monday night against the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's going to be very tough. I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it off, but it would just mean the absolute world to me if they won the Stanley Cup. It'd be absolutely crazy to see. So for the Habs, I've just been drinking a lot of this week, which is just, your basic, if you're Canadian, you'll know, Molson Export, which is Montreal Canadiens beer. Pretty much you go to the Bell Center, you watch a Habs game, you're drinking Molson Export, Molson Canadian, all the Molson beers, because the owner of the Montreal Canadiens is Jeff Molson. So that's what I'm drinking. Nothing too spectacular right now, but let me know what you guys are drinking. In terms of what I have been playing this week, well, I finally finished off Mass Effect 2, or I finished off the main campaign plus all of the side missions, and I still have a couple of the assignments that I need to do, but those are like the smaller side missions. But all of the main side missions and the main campaign, and put about 40-ish hours into Mass Effect 2, around there, I'd say. 35 to 40. I mean, you probably can easily get 60 out of it, so I'm probably going to go back to it, but finished off the story and everything. And it is honestly one of my favorite RPGs that I've ever played. Like, it's incredible what they've done with the dialogue, the character development. You truly care about everybody on your squad. You truly do care about every single character, and you want to learn more about them, and you want to do the missions that they ask you to do as side missions. So it's just such an incredible game. I feel like a good RPG, one of the most important things is having those side missions and those side stories that you care about besides just the main quest. So it's done for now. I'm going to take a little bit of a break from Mass Effect because there's so many other games I want to play, and I'm not going to play Mass Effect 3 right away from the Legendary Edition. So I'll jump into that later. But from what I know about Mass Effect 3 is that a lot of people were disappointed in the ending, and Mass Effect 2 is the best in this series. So I'm not that crazy excited to jump into it from what I know, but I'm sure it'll still be a great game. Besides that, I actually managed to get my hands on Ratchet and Clank for PS5 secondhand. It's only been out for a little while now, and it's already showing up secondhand on secondary selling websites. Like here in Canada, we have Kijiji. That's like our Craigslist. If you're Canadian, you'll know what I mean. But there's tons of copies of Ratchet and Clank already available on that. And in Canada, the PlayStation 5 games cost $90 before tax. So generally around $100 after tax. And you just got to wait for a lot of these PS5 exclusives a week or so, and people are selling them off secondhand. It seems like that. Even with like Returnal, I think it was similar to that. But I think Ratchet and Clank, one of the reasons why they're being posted so frequently and so fast is because it is a short game. Like, I picked it up, I started playing it. We're Sunday. This episode's coming out on Sunday. I started playing it about 3 days ago, and I'm pretty much done. I think I maybe have like 1 hour left in the game. I can already tell. So it's a very short game. if you're just going to do the main quest, and if you do everything in the game, I would say it would take you about 15 hours. But if you just want to focus on the main quest and the side quests and not collect every little knickknack in the game, it probably will only run you like 10-ish hours, I would say. So it's short, and that's why they're popping up. And that's why, in general, I don't think it's worth $90. But Ratchet and Clank, throughout my entire life, I've played every single one from the PS2 up until now. And it's always been one of my favorite franchises. It's probably my favorite franchise on PlayStation. And I think that Insomniac, by far, it's not even close. People love to say that Naughty Dog is the best and all that kind of stuff. But for me, Insomniac, without a shadow of a doubt, is the best development studio that PlayStation has. It's like not even close, because they make games with incredible gameplay and great graphics and fun stories. Whereas when you look at in my opinion, when you look at the other PlayStation games, like Naughty Dog games, the story and the cinematics are like the main focus. But with like a game like Ratchet and Clank, it's like the gameplay is very, very solid, and it's a lot of fun. So if you have a PS5, I would say it's definitely worth playing 100%. Like I'm loving it, but I don't know if it's worth full price. I don't think it is worth full price. I think you should wait until it goes on sale, or until you can get it secondhand, just because of the length of the game. You're going to be done this game in like a weekend if you really wanted to, right? Maybe like 3-4 days if you binge it, like I've been doing. So there's that. But maybe they'll have DLC in the future. So those have been the main stuff. Oh, actually, no, there is one more game I've been playing, Mad Max. I bought Mad Max once I got the FPS boost. It's a game I've always wanted to play. It's from the Avalanche Studios group, and I've heard so many good things about it, and I've put in a couple of hours into it, and I'm really enjoying it. So as soon as I'm done Ratchet and Clank, I'm going to jump back into Mad Max. Like, the combat's really fun. The graphics still really hold up. The environment's just like this big wasteland, which is super cool. I've never actually seen the Mad Max movie, so I may have to check that out after as well. But just from what I've been playing, really enjoying it so far, and I'm going to jump back into that after Ratchet and Clank. So that's it. Let me know what you guys have been playing in the comments below, and without further ado, let's jump into this week's topics. All right, so firstly, there is a pretty exciting feature that is now actually available for developers who are making games for Windows, for the Xbox Series X and S, and for the Xbox One, and this is AMD's FidelityFX Super Resolution. Now, this is a feature I think a lot of people have been wondering about and waiting for, to see when it was going to come out, and just how it's going to be utilized across games. And basically, FidelityFX Super Resolution is going to allow games to run at higher resolutions while keeping steady frame rates. So that's 60 frames per second. That's going to be the major advantage of it, because we've already seen right now with a lot of games that are in the early stages. And I mean, this could all be attributed to the fact that the consoles are still new, and the GDKs are still very early in their development cycle in terms of like developers actually having their hands on it. If you think about it, they really only had them, I think, since June of 2019. It's only been about 2 years, and they were still making games for the older consoles. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. But anyways, the AMD FidelityFX Super Resolution is going to, I think, take some of the load off when trying to get games to run at the native 4K 60 FPS without having to do the dynamic resolution, or without having too many drops in frames per second. And it is now, like I said, available on the Series X, Windows PC, and the Xbox One consoles. Now, we're not going to see just exactly how this is all going to work with games, I think, for a little bit, because developers are still going to need to be able to utilize it. And for games that are already in development, I don't know how easy it is to be able to utilize it. I'm not sure. I'm not a developer, but I think this is very exciting for somebody. If you're on the Xbox ecosystem, you're on the Xbox platforms, to know that a lot of these features that AMD is going to be releasing on their GPUs, these big FidelityFX features, so there's a bunch of them. They're all going to be coming over to the Xbox Series X and S, and that's going to make games look better. That's going to make games run better. And again, just further proves the point that we are so early on in this generation of consoles. So you see lots of comparisons of video games. You see lots of people looking at graphics and picking them apart. And this isn't, a lot of those videos aren't going to be anywhere near the same as they are going to be once we get further on into this generation. I think one of the big things with AMD's FidelityFX Super Resolution is that comparison people like to make with a DLSS. And one of the big differences between Super Resolution DLSS is that DLSS on NVIDIA's GPUs, I believe, actually uses AI machine learning to actually upscale resolutions and picture and everything to make it look better. Whereas with the FidelityFX Super Resolution, it doesn't use AI and machine learning to do that. And it's all just like software based, and it doesn't have the same amount of like technology behind it as the DLSS stuff. So I don't think it is in comparison to it. I don't think that's what we should be taking of this. I just think it's another feature that the Series X and S will have to utilize in their GDKs in order to make sure that games look and run smoothly. But with that also being said, Xbox is definitely looking into DirectML, and they are definitely working on it. As this was an article I've talked about in multiple videos, but this came back out in November 11th, 2020, and saying that Xbox Series DirectML powered DLSS like AI upscaling is an area of very active research for Microsoft. And this comes via a Xbox technical fellow in an interview with Digital Foundry, just pretty much saying that they're in very active research at Xbox and Microsoft, but with AI and DirectML in order to be able to utilize the AI upscaling techniques and the super resolution stuff, and putting all these things together in order to give us like a great picture at high frame rates. Now, I'm not too technical when it comes to any of the stuff. All I know, and I think all we really need to care about if you're somebody who just loves to play video games, is that going forward throughout this generation, there are lots of technologies that are going to be coming out on these GDKs for developers in order for them to utilize them on the Xbox Series X and S with the full RDNA2 architecture on the Xbox Series X and S that will just give us better experiences as gamers. So we're going to have that 4K 60 frames per second. And we're already seeing that achieved in some games. We're seeing a lot of dynamic resolutions where when stuff gets too crazy on screen, the resolution falls to like 1440p or something just to make sure that the FPS stays at 60. And I think that's going to be the big jump as we go through this generation, that dynamic resolution getting smaller and smaller. Whereas instead of dropping a scene down to 1440p or even 1080p, it's going to drop far less in terms of resolution, and you're still going to be able to have that 60 frames per second. I think that's the goal. I think that's where the standard right now is in console gaming that people want to see, is they want to have native 4K 60 frames per second, and potentially at some point, it's hard to say this because ray tracing is something that people want to see, but it is also a technique that is super taxing on GPUs that even very high powered expensive PCs, like over $2,000 with big GPUs, can have trouble playing games at 4K 60 FPS with the ray tracing on. So I don't know how realistic it is to think that all games coming out are going to have 4K 60 ray tracing on, especially with the price that we're paying for these consoles. I think that we're going to see performance and fidelity modes throughout this entire generation, but as long as they give us that 60 frames per second mode, that's something that should be in every single game. What I do think is interesting is something that actually Ratchet and Clank A Rift Apart employed in their game on the PlayStation 5. So there were actually 3 modes on Ratchet and Clank. There was the fidelity mode with the higher resolutions, but it was at 30 frames per second. There was the performance mode, which was 60 frames per second with the reduction in the resolution. And then there was performance ray tracing, which I think it was lower graphical settings. I think even more of a reduction in the resolution, but they kept ray tracing on, which that could be a way that some developers go throughout this generation. I think on the Xbox Series X and S, or the Xbox Series X particularly, you're going to have more, since it's more powerful, you're going to have more leeway in the settings, and you're not going to have to reduce graphical settings as much with ray tracing in order to get that 60 frames per second. And I think as developers really get a grasp of the GDKs more with the Series X, I think games are just going to look better and better and run greater and greater. And even now, with the fact that the ecosystem is so integrated and tied in with PC, it's going to make things easy for developers to create games that are going to be able to run across both PC and Xbox seamlessly and not have to have ports onto consoles and stuff like that. And I think that's a big advantage of developing for the Xbox ecosystem, because they develop these games on PC, right? And then a lot of the times they have to, I guess, port them or use the PlayStation development kits and make changes to it so that it runs properly on that console. And I think that seamless transition between the PC and the Xbox for games is going to be something that developers really, really enjoy having. So it's just another feature coming onto Xbox, and I believe, like, it's, unless I'm missing it, I don't know if PlayStation has announced that it's coming onto PlayStation. I think I've heard it was, but I'm not sure. It may not be, but they aren't as nearly as public and transparent with these things as Xbox is. And the only reason I could think that they aren't as public and transparent with it is because it may not actually be utilized on their platform. But like, I'm not sure about that. We'll have to wait and see. So moving on to another feature that Jason Ronald chimed in about was a feature that had to do with downloading games, auto updating them, and being able to do it all at once. So this comes via a tweet from John Linneman from Digital Foundry, basically just like asking about the fact that on Xbox, when you put your console into sleep mode or into instant start mode and you jump back in, games that you frequently play will generally be updated, and it won't update every single game. So here's what he says. Has anyone found a way to bypass updates on Xbox games, or at least ensure that all games, even if you haven't played for a while, are always up to date? I'm filming for a project and keep hitting delays when games want to update. I just want to start it. Don't care about updates. If your console is on the instant start mode, it should install updates as soon as they are available. And he replies, yeah, but it doesn't. I have to keep games up to date, enabled, and always use instant start mode. The issue is that games I haven't played recently won't update until you try to run them again. It only seems to keep recent games updated. And then Jason Ronald chimes in here and says, for gamers who have large game libraries installed on both internal and external storage, we try to balance keeping the games you are most likely to play up to date while also respecting a player's bandwidth. We continue to refine that balance to minimize friction for players. And honestly, Jason Ronald's response there and the reasoning behind why they do that makes complete sense. And as a gamer, an Xbox gamer, I appreciate that outlook on it. Like, I don't want every single game that I have downloaded in my library, on my external hard drive, and in my internal SSD to be updating all the time if I never play it, and just using all of my download and bandwidth. Now, luckily, I have I think a limited download, so it doesn't really matter to me. But if you're somebody who has capped download bandwidth, right? Like, you can only download a certain amount of gigabytes or whatever per month. You don't want every game downloading. So I find that take on why they do it a very valid take, and I think it's a good thing that they're doing it. But then again, I can also see on the other side where people don't want to have to deal with updates at all with games they have installed if they play it now and then play it in 2 months from now, and they want to be able to have that option. So it looks like he continues on here, because John Linneman responds to Jason Ronald's tweet explaining why it happened, saying, that makes sense. Any chance though that you could introduce some sort of always update all games feature, or if not that, perhaps the option to simply play without patching but offline? That would solve it entirely, I think. Good. And then Jason Ronald responds, good feedback, both things we have previously considered. We will look into it again. Now, it'd be great if the more options you get, the better. Like, the more options you get on a console for quality of life to be able to do what you want and customize how you want it is always better than not having options. But out of those two things that he mentions here about having the ability to have an option to update an all games feature, or having the option to play without patching, so playing it offline, I would love to see that come in, where you can just play games that need patches offline without the patch if you have it downloaded on your hard drive. I didn't even know you couldn't do that, but from reading this, I guess you can't. I mean, I have to double check and try to make sure, because I'm always online when I'm on my Xbox, so I've never run into this, but I have played games offline before, so I'm not 100% sure exactly how that works. But the fact that Jason Ronald responds says it's good feedback, and that they've considered both in the past, looks like that they're looking into it, and that it may eventually come out. So if you're somebody who is waiting for these features, they could be coming soon. So just a little quality of life thing that could be coming out. And I mean, like I said, anytime they are looking at things to improve the quality of life of these consoles, especially now in the early stages, so that in 2-3 years from now, they're just seamless and you don't have to worry about things not working. It's important to always be updating the OS and always be making it easier to use. And I've said this before, but I always love how transparent and like how in touch with the community these Xbox guys are, Jason Ronald and all these guys who respond and give you insight as to the fact that they're actually looking and thinking about these things, and that if you have real feedback that makes sense, you're not just bitching and complaining all the time, right? Or you actually have some logical, like, I guess, logical criticisms or that would help make the console better, they're listening. And that's always great to see. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this. Let me know what you guys think about these two things, about the FidelityFX Super Resolution. I think that's something that a lot of people are very excited about, and I can't wait to see how it's utilized on the Xbox Series X and S going forward, and with PC and everything. And maybe we'll just start, maybe these features are going to be so great that we're going to start getting consistent like 4K 60 ray tracing, all that kind of stuff. Or maybe they just won't do that much, but we'll have to wait and see. It's all going to be up to how the developers utilize it. And if you know about, because a lot of people come into my comments and they tell me whenever I make these videos that, because I'm not saying that it's not available on PlayStation. I don't say that because I'm not sure, because PlayStation hasn't been very clear on their take on this stuff. But if you guys know for sure or not, I know that's I know that's a big ask, but from what you guys know, is it available on PlayStation? I still don't know. I know they've mentioned other stuff. I know that people think it is, but PlayStation hasn't come out and talked about it. They use AMD, right? Both consoles use AMD. We know that Xbox has the full RDNA 2 architecture, and PlayStation, from what we understand, it doesn't have all the features of RDNA 2. So is it available? Well, I'm not sure. But let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below. All right, jumping over here to another just very comical thing. I talked about this in last week's episode when it had to do with the Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield and all that kind of stuff, where these, I guess you can call them game journalist websites, which, because I mean, this is the stuff they're publishing, so it's kind of ridiculous to refer to them as journalists, but I guess that's what you have to do. They were talking about, they're just putting articles out there to get people to click on it, and I'm falling for it, and I'm talking about it, so I guess they're winning. But I want to talk about it because it's funny, and it has to do with them putting articles, still asking questions about whether exclusive Xbox games are going to be making their way onto PlayStation. And this one is the most crazy comical thing that we've seen so far, because if you read the actual article about it, they say in the article, like, yeah, there's no way this is coming to Xbox, and they don't even like give a reason why it could come, or no way it's coming to PlayStation, and they don't even say like why it could come to PlayStation. They don't even give any sort of like premise or rumor or anything as to why it could potentially come to PlayStation. They just ask in the headline, is Forza Horizon 5 coming to PS4/PS5? And it's such a ridiculous headline, and it's so obvious. It's only for getting people to click on the website and drive traffic to it, and to get people like me talking about it, and to get people on social media talking about it. That it to me, it works in the short term, but then it just totally destroys any credibility this website GameRant.com has. Like, you can never read another GameRant article again and take anything they say seriously because of stuff like this. And you can say that with a lot of big gaming websites these days. It's just a lot of big media these days, and pretty much anything. It's hard to take anything they say seriously because of the ridiculous headlines they put out there in order to like get emotions out of people. But it's why I'm talking about it more so than anything is not because I want to discuss like how stupid the article is in general, but more so to talk about, like, think about where we are right now in the Xbox gaming sphere, or gaming world, whatever. When you think about where Xbox was with the Xbox One for 2013 to 2020, so 7 years, the Xbox One was a joke to most people. I loved the Xbox One. Not loved, I shouldn't say loved. I enjoyed the Xbox One. It wasn't one of my favorite consoles. The Xbox 360 was significantly better. To me, the original Xbox was significantly better. The Xbox One was probably the worst Xbox console up until the One X, which I can say I loved the One X. So I didn't love the original Xbox One, but I loved the One X. And when they launched Game Pass in 2017, I loved that. But in general, the Xbox One was such a joke of a console generation for Xbox. They really messed up right with Don Matrick right at the beginning with the $100 more for the Xbox One, the forcing you to have Kinect, the size of the VCR of that console, it being less powerful out of the gate than the PlayStation 4. Kind of like the reverse of what's happening this generation right now, especially with like the size of the console and the power between the PS5 and the Series X. And with all that being said, is that for 7 years you would have, I mean, I didn't see too many, and maybe there were, but for 7 years you probably, like, stuff like this wasn't even relevant. Like, journalistic websites probably wouldn't even think about pushing out clicky bait headlines and articles like this, play off of all of the hype of the Xbox in order to get people to come from the Sony and PlayStation fan base to the website, because there wasn't very much hype for Xbox and there wasn't very much excitement for the console, and people, if they would have seen this headline with the Xbox One, maybe wouldn't have even cared about it. But now, because Xbox has done such a great turnaround and such a great job with the Xbox Series X and S, we're going to see more stuff like this, because these game journalistic websites know that the hype for the Xbox right now is higher probably than it's ever been, with Xbox Game Pass, Bethesda, 23 first party studios under their belt. And when they start dropping games on a quarterly basis or on a 3 month basis or whatever, you're going to see more and more articles like this coming out asking are these games going to come out to other platforms, because of the fact previously first party Xbox games have come out on other platforms, just in general, PC, right? Or Minecraft with Mojang coming out on everything. So, and like the Outer Worlds and stuff, right? So that's why these articles are popping up, because they know that for people who have hope, who look at these games now and they're seeing Xbox coming up and they're going to be creating amazing games going forward, people are going to want to know or have some sort of like delusion that they may have come out on another platform when they're obviously not. And they want to click into this article thinking that when they read through it, there's going to be some crazy rumor that has been leaked from Microsoft that it's going to be releasing on PlayStation. And there is none of that in this article. It's literally just the headline. It's actually really funny. It's just a headline, and then they just talk about how like Forza was made by Playground Games and it's a great racing game, but don't worry, on PlayStation you have other options too, with Gran Turismo and Need for Speed. And so it's really funny in that sense. But I just think that it's a sign that the times have changed this generation, that Xbox is doing very, very well with building their fan base, building their hype, and getting people very interested in the platform, way more than they were with the Xbox One. And we're going to see stuff like this all the way up until Elder Scrolls 6 and beyond, and the next Bethesda game and the next Fallout and the next Wolfenstein. And all of these games are going to have stuff like this to get people to click and to discuss and to create some sort of hype around it. And, you know, it is annoying and it is stupid, but it is all, I mean, it's all bringing the spotlight on to Xbox, which we didn't see any of that last generation. So I'm kind of taking, I guess, the positive look on this, because it's ridiculous. Like, imagine publishing this article with any sort of like, I don't know, if you're like the editor of the website, right? And you're like, oh yeah, this is like the headline really matches what we're going to be talking about in this article. Let's put it out. I don't know how it works with these websites, but anyways, that's all I wanted to say on this. I'm just kind of rambling now on it, but I think the positive spin that I'm trying to put on this is that you wouldn't have seen this 7 years ago, and Xbox is doing a great job now that you're seeing these journalistic websites having to create fake controversies or fake drama or fake outrage or fake discussions because of how popular Xbox is starting to become again. Okay, so moving on here, talking about Redfall. So Redfall was the major game that they showed off as the last game at the Xbox and Bethesda showcase. And I said this before, that I wasn't that crazy excited for it when they did show it off at the Xbox and Bethesda showcase as the last game. I was hoping maybe for something bigger with some more gameplay, and I came away from that game specifically interested in it, wanting to see more, hoping to see gameplay soon, but not like not overblown hype or anything that I can't wait to get my hands on it. And I'm still kind of in that place, but the more that I read about how this game is going to work and what it's all about, the more excited I am getting for it, and the more that I can't wait to finally see some gameplay. But what's interesting about Redfall is that this isn't a game that they just started working on, and it's had a relatively long development cycle, as it began development shortly after Prey shipped. So it began development after Prey Crashed Moon shipped, which I believe was in June of 2018. So we're coming on to June 2019, 2020, 2021. We're 3 years in the development. It's coming on 2022. So it's going to be close to like almost a 5-year development cycle for Redfall, meaning that this is going to have pretty much a AAA development schedule. So it could be a way bigger game than maybe a lot of people expected, and it could be a lot more in depth than people expected, have a in-depth big story, and it won't be exactly like what people are expecting, which is Left 4 Dead co-op with vampires. And the more that they talk about this game, it doesn't seem like it's an exact clone of Left 4 Dead. I think there's going to be more things to it. I think there's going to be more of the fact that you can play this single player and probably just run through like a story, and they're comparing it more along the lines of like co-op, but with like elements from like Dishonored. And obviously Arcane made Dishonored, and the first Dishonored is one of my favorite games. I still need to play number 2. So all of those things put into one has me more and more excited for Redfall. And then there's this other thing here that is a great thing to see, is that according to the profile of id Software animator Jeff Sinita, he has also been working on Redfall, meaning that people who have worked on Doom, and we all know how great the Doom series is from id Software with the shooting mechanics and the movement and just everything about that game, they are also helping out and working on Redfall. And it's cool to see that people from different studios are collaborating and working on games, and now they're all part of Xbox Game Studios. And this is something that Phil Spencer talked about during the Xbox and Bethesda showcase, and it was that if people are interested in other development studios ideas, they have free reign to go and add to the games and to work on them and to help them out and to collaborate. And Xbox and Microsoft aren't going to push them to do that. It's only if they want to do that, if they find that there is a game that's being worked on from a different studio that they have an interest in. And we're seeing this right here with Jeff Sinita, who worked on Doom and is working on Redfall. So that's very cool to see. The more I hear about this game, the more that my excitement is starting to raise on it. And they talk about, like, Pete Hines had an interview with GameSpot, and he went more in depth about the game and the open world. And one of the other cool things that sounds awesome is that it says here, so in his interview with GameSpot, Hines states that the town will have a dynamic element to it. So every time you play it, you're getting something different. The world is changing from the last time you played it in ways that are meaningful from a gameplay standpoint, meaning that every time you pick up Redfall, it sounds like you're going to have to figure out the best way to utilize all of your skills and utilize your gunplay and utilize your teammates if you're playing with teammates and what they bring to the table in your loadouts in order to be able to move on to beat your objectives and move on to the next part of the game. So, I mean, there's still a lot to be shown off about this game. There's still a lot to talk about. It's coming out in 2022, but the more information that comes out about it, I think the more excited I'm going to get for it. And the fact that it's going to be a AAA development cycle. So I think that they have a lot of time to work on it. It's a brand new IP, and I mean, it's going to be Game Pass day one, right? Like, so if you can try it out, if you don't like it, you don't have to play it. But that 4 to 5 year development cycle increases my expectations for it. I guess that's the best way to put it. But let me know what you guys think about Redfall. Let me know if you guys were excited when they showed it off at the Xbox and Bethesda showcase, and if you weren't, are you starting to get more excited for it? All right, and finally, to end off this week's show, I want to talk about Windows 11 and Xbox Game Pass integration, because I think this is a pretty big deal and a pretty big thing that if you're somebody on the Xbox ecosystem, in the Xbox community, you should be pretty excited for, because it is really kind of finalizing that Xbox ecosystem, PC and Xbox, and giving the option and giving the availability of Xbox to so many people. So what they are doing with Windows 11 is they are natively integrating Xbox into the operating system. So you're not going to have that separate Xbox app that you download from the Microsoft Store and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be built within Windows 11. It's going to run better. It's going to be faster. And it's going to be just a part of Windows now going forward. And on top of that, features that are currently available on Xbox, like auto HDR and direct storage to decrease load times, are all going to be available through Windows 11. And for somebody like me who has a PC that was built in 2018, has an SSD, my Xbox Series X and S load games faster, I think direct storage is really going to benefit me. But if you're somebody who just built a brand new PC and you have the fastest SSD, it probably won't make that big of a difference. But for somebody like me, it probably will, because the Xbox, when I compare the load times, is definitely still faster than my SSD. But with all that being said, it's just Microsoft and Xbox. They are making that ecosystem one, so that no matter where you play, you're going to have a very, very similar experience, whether you're on PC or whether you're on Xbox. Now, the other really exciting thing is that within Xbox Game Pass on Windows 11, you're going to, if you have Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, you're going to have the ability, if you want, to just click play on games that are available through xCloud, and then it'll stream the games right to your PC, and you're not going to need the big hardware, the big GPU and CPU and SSD and stuff to run these next generation games. No matter what type of PC you have the Xbox app or Windows 11 where it's natively in your PC, in your computer, you're going to be able to play all next generation games, which just opens up Xbox Game Pass to so many more people. And this is very, very important going forward for Xbox, because a lot of people right now on PC may not think about Xbox Game Pass. They may not think that, hey, I don't have a PC that can really play games. There's no point in me signing up to Xbox Game Pass. But with the ability to just stream any game to xCloud, they may take that plunge into the service, which I think is going to exponentially increase the amount of subscribers going on to Xbox Game Pass, which will bring more games onto the service, bring more third parties putting their games on the service on day one. Because if you start to think about the install base of Xbox, and then the install base of Xbox Game Pass across multiple devices, so PC, Xbox, literally on your Xbox One if they put xCloud, streaming stick, smart TV apps, and pretty much anywhere where you can connect to the internet, and all you'll have to do is connect a controller. How much that is going to increase the subscription of the service, I think is going to be absolutely wild. And I think that, like, as an ecosystem, it can't be beat. It's going to be the main gaming ecosystem going forward that third parties are going to look at first when deciding where to put their games, because they aren't going to have to think about just putting their games on a locked console to a fixed number of users. They know that they put their game on the Xbox ecosystem. There's so many millions of subscribers already onto Xbox Game Pass, and the ability for those numbers to grow on a daily basis is exponential because of the amount of devices that the service is going to be available on. And if you're a developer, you want as many people to play your game as possible. I don't believe for one second, even exclusive developers, if you were to ask them in their heart of hearts, do you want people to only play your game on a specific platform, or do you want the entire world, no matter where they are, to be able to play their game, no matter what platform they're on? I think most of them would choose being able to get as many people to play it on any platform. So this is why I think this is so exciting. You're still, and on top of that, it being natively integrated into Windows 11, it's just going to be there when people get a PC. People may not know about Xbox Game Pass. They buy a PC, it has Windows 11. Now they know about Xbox Game Pass, whereas previously they would have to go to the Microsoft Store and download it. And some people just don't know about it, don't want to do it, aren't interested. But now that's natively in there, they may get interested if they see what is available. So I think this is actually a really big thing, and a bigger thing than a lot of people think. And I can't wait for Windows 11 to drop just to test it out, make sure that, like, it works well and it's not buggy, because, you know, with Windows releases, there's always issues that arise. So Hopefully it's not another Windows Vista situation or Windows 8 situation, because those weren't very great operating systems. So, but yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I think this is bigger than, I think this is a big thing, and I think this is a great thing, and I think this is just another step forward, solidifying the Xbox ecosystem. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. Thank you again for listening. Thank you again for stopping by. And if you are new here, you like what you see throughout this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button just so we can have great conversations in the comments below. And I do upload daily videos throughout the week, and then I have this podcast on Sunday that comes out to kind of sum up what's going on throughout the weekend, just if anything new comes out that I wanted to go over. So again, thanks for listening. And like I said last week, it seemed like it worked last week when I asked you guys, hey, if you're going to cheer for a team right now left in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you don't have a favorite team out there and you don't really care, send those good vibes to the Habs. And it worked. They made it to the Stanley Cup finals. I'm so excited for game 1 tomorrow. And again, cheer for the Habs, send them some good vibes. So hopefully they can bring Stanley Cup home. And man, it'll be pretty crazy because this will be the first time in my life if they actually do win it. Even if they lose it, I'll be really sad. Like, I may cry. If they win or lose, I'll probably cry. But if they lose, I mean, at least I get to watch them in the finals. If they win, it'll be one of the happiest moments of my life. And hopefully that happens. But again, thank you guys for stopping by. And I will see you throughout the week in the videos or next week on the Plumecast. We'll be right back.